Hello everyone, welcome to this Photoshop tutorial. I'm recording this on a phone instead of screen recording because for some reason screen recording software doesn't like Photoshop that I have on my computer, and it won't show these pull down drop down tabs that are kind of important when you're showing someone how to do stuff on Photoshop. So first we're going to start out by hiding the Jeebs text logo and then selecting our original hand layer. And then we're going to come over here to the direct selection or object selection tool. You can press W to pull it up. And then we're going to click object selection here. There's also the quick selection tool, but we just want to go ahead and grab that object selection. We're going to draw a box around the object that we want to quick select it. And then we are going to press Control Copy and then Control Paste in order to get our object selection on a new layer. One thing that you can do if, for example, your direct selection isn't selecting your object, and this happens a lot in photos where the background is very similar to the object that you're selecting and it's not plain, what you can do is come over to the quick selection tool and you can subtract by using the minus brush up here at the top, or you can add by selecting the adding brush. So now I can add that back to my selection. You can change the size of your brushes by using like the bracket symbols or coming up to the brush icon at the top. You can change the size of your brush, so how much area is being selected, and then the hardness, the sensitivity of the selection. We want around 50%. It's going to select things that are that the program thinks is in the object. So if you had a very dark shadow next to this dark shadow, it may pick it up. So that's where the quick selection tool is really helpful. So once we have our object selected, we can hide our original layer. If we want to deselect from the selection, a quick way that you can do that is go over to the rectangle tool and just click once. Here, we can click on the move tool again, which is up here, or the quick key is V. And we can now play around with our hand. We want to go ahead and adjust the color of this. You can do this multiple ways depending on what you want to do, but you can go to Image, Adjustments, and then there's a whole bunch of options of ways that you can change an image. Hue, saturation, color balance, the vibrance, the exposure, the brightness, and contrast. What we're going to do is go ahead and go over to hue and saturation, because this is honestly one of the quickest ways that we can go ahead and make this hand pink. We're going to go over here into the green area. We can play around until we get about a pink color, and then we can pull up the saturation. This is one of the quickest ways we can get an overall like color overlay. We can increase the brightness if we want, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and keep the brightness at 0. You can also enter in values here. It doesn't have to be exact as long as it's similar. Just press OK. Another way that you can change the color, again, is going to Adjustments and then going to Color Balance and then playing with the midtones, sort of the overall midtone of the object. You can play with the shadows. So you're just now adjusting the shadow color by making it blue. And then you can also, adjust the highlights. This is a really great way to like control what color you're making your highlights versus the shadow. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. I'm not going to save it because I've already changed the color of my hand. I'm going to put my hand down here. Another thing that you can do is go into Adjustments, Brightness, and Contrast, and maybe up the brightness just a little bit, and maybe like a little bit to the contrast. I mean, it's really up to you. It's playing around and seeing what looks good with the scroll bars. Once we're done with that, we can press OK. All right, so how to add special effects. How we're going to add special effects with our layer selected. We're going to go over here to the FX button in the bottom. We're going to press on that button and then click on like outer glow. Really, you can click on any of these, or you can press blending options to pull up the entire layer style box. Here we're going to check marks drop shadow, we're going to check mark outer glow, we're going to check mark color overlay, and we're going to check mark inner glow. Let's start with inner glow. Our inner glow is automatically probably going to be on linear dodge add. This is just a blending mode. Don't worry too much about it now. You can play around with these and see what different kind of effects that you can get. We want our opacity to be about 35% for our inner glow, and we're going to want our size to be somewhere in the in-between, our choke all the way down, our jitter all the way down, and our range again somewhere in the in-between. We don't want like a glow that isn't glowy or is jittery. color overlay. We're gonna do a pink red color, and our opacity is gonna be around 20 to 30%. You can click here to, you know, adjust the color that you want. And then we're gonna go over here into outer glow. Here again, it's linear dodge add. We want our opacity to be about 35%. High spread or low spread, high size, low jitter, mid range. Drop shadow. The drop shadow is basically going to give your object more dimension. This is just a shadow that you're adding to objects that real objects have. Our blend mode right now is just normal. That's fine. You can have about a 25% spread, about 250 pixel size. As long as it's around this, it should be okay. Once you're done with that, you can press OK. And now we've added our effects that we want to add to our hand. Once we position our hand in the center, we're just going to click and drag. These pink lines are just going to help, but they're guidelines. They're quick snap lines that are going to help us place things directly in the center, in the middle of the image. Once we place it, we can press Control Copy, Control Paste, and then we can bring it up here. Once we have it up here, we'll go over here to the Properties panel and go down and press -80. This is a quick way to flip it, or a quick way to rotate. That's going to keep it exact. You can also type in your exact rotation number here in order to quickly flip or rotate. I want the hands to be slightly exposed, so I'm going to pull this down, and I want it to be kind of even on the in-between. Now that we're done with that, all right, so now that we've added our special effects, we're going to come down here, and one thing that you can do is if this stuff is getting in your way is you can hide these layers. Same thing with the Jeebs group cutout. Go ahead and just hide the group. That way you can see the things that you want to see. It's kind of hard to see on here, but you can see the triangle right here, the triangle cutout. And one way that you can do this is just by making layers more opaque. So if I come over here to this base layer, it's at 79% opacity. And this is just to kind of help it blend with everything. And I can also now see the triangle. If you don't want it to be fully opaque before you use a clipping mask, you're going to come up here and just drag it back up to 100%. That opacity is basically allowing it to be see-through. So what we're going to do with in our eyes and triangles folder, we're going to make sure that the regular eye is at the top, which means that it's in front. If I drag it down, now it's in the behind. Drag it to be at the top. And then with our space eye selected and our triangle below, which already has our effects added, we're going to right click, create clipping mask. And now the triangle is been made into the shape that like our image is being clipped. Not sure how fully to explain that. Just know that if you have a shape in the below an image, you can use that shape to cut out what you want. You can play around with the opacity of the eye to like make it blend more if you wanted, or you can leave it full opacity, which is what I did. Now that that's edited, we can go ahead and hide this. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and make our hand layers visible. And now we can adjust our hand layers to sort of be above and below our triangle and make sure everything's sort of centered. That's kind of using these center lines. Next, we can add our Jeebs group cutout, and we're going to select the entire folder group here. If you just try to click and drag, it'll take just one image out of the entire images. So what we want to do is drop down on the folder, open it up, and we're going to click the first one and then press Shift, hold Shift, and click down to the bottom. That's going to select everything in the layer. Now we can move them all together and center them. That's probably good. I think I'll move it over just a little bit more. Alrighty. I may go ahead and shrink them down just a little bit and then pull them here. You can play around with that. Now we can... Alright, after we close the folder with the Jeebs cutout group in it, we can come up here and press the view icon for the Jeebs text. We can open up this folder and go ahead and hold Shift to select both, or hold Control to select both. And then we're going to go up here to type. And then we're going to click warp text. Over here to style, we're going to drop down to arch. Actually, just kidding. We're going to go to bulge. And we're going to click vertical. Now we have sort of this like receding, Star Wars-y type of receding font. We can press OK, and it automatically edited both photos, and now we have this sort of receding, three-dimensional blocky text. The glow sort of adds some of that dimension and creates some interest. Warping your text is a really, really powerful way to add interest to the text area. So I definitely recommend playing around with the different ways that you can warp text, the different ways that you can change like the color of your text, and then also playing around with the different types that you can use. So if you come up here, there's all these different types that you can use. You can even download fonts. If you use Adobe Fonts, which if I click here in this tab, these are all the Adobe fonts that I have downloaded. These are sort of just like an endless amount of free fonts that you can download and upload to your Creative Cloud. I'm not sure if this is an option with Purdue Adobe Creative Cloud accounts, but with my personal account, this is what I do. I download these and they automatically upload. I just have to turn them on Adobe Fonts Online, and it automatically uploads into my Photoshop file, and I just have to click here to quickly find it. This is just a fun way that you can play around with your text, and I recommend just playing around in Photoshop. This is how I learned most of Photoshop, and that's really it. This is how we make All right, now that we've made our logo, just to quickly go over some troubleshooting tips that are really important and that may help you not get so frustrated with Photoshop. One thing that you can do is play with the hierarchy of your layers. If you want this hand to be behind the triangle, you'll have to drag it all the way down and put it below the triangle layer, so that way it's not in front of anyone's faces. Another thing that you can do is play around with the size. You want to hold shift when you're enlarging an image to keep the proportion. If you don't hold shift while you're clicking and dragging the size, it will distort and not change the size proportionally. Another thing that you can do is rotate like this by just putting your mouse here in the corner and allowing it to rotate. If you want to rotate at fixed positions, you want to hold shift while you're rotating and it'll automatically adjust to common integer rotation values. Another thing that might get frustrating while you're using Photoshop is if your layers panel, for example, if I take my layers panel and pull it out, accidentally closed out of it. How do I view my layers? I go up to Windows, I click here on layers. I can also press F7. Same thing, for example, I can drag it down and add it back to my tab over here just to keep my space clean. And I can click here to view my properties. Same thing, if you accidentally click out of something, you can come here and literally click on it to add it back to your side toolbar.